Hey everyone, so welcome to my advanced how to crackle tune your Kpro on my RSX Type S. This is my 2006 RSX Type S with the 2006 K24 TSX engine. This video is going to be the advanced version of how to crackle tune, where you can use a switch to turn off this function and feature. If you haven't seen the first video, I would suggest go through and watch that, because that is going to be how to set this up initially. Once you've watched that, come back, watch this video, because this will give you the next step on how to do things with a switch. Basically, what I'm going to show you is how to use output functions, called the nitrous features of the Kpro, basically allow you to arm and disarm and then add the timing to do the crackle tuning. Basically what we have to do is tap into a trigger wire in the harness. Basically what I'm going to use is the VTEC pressure switch. We don't really need that wire. It's a great use of a trigger to arm this system, and that's what we're going to use to activate it, to basically turn on and off. And the way this works is we're going to cut that wire, hook it up to a switch, and that switch will provide a ground to the ECU. When the ECU sees this ground, it will know that you want to turn it on, and when it doesn't see the ground, that's when it knows to turn it off. So what I'm going to do is I have to cut wire B11, which is the VTEC pressure switch, and this is B on my car, and it's the blue with black stripe wire. So I'm going to cut that and hook it up to a ground, and that's how we're going to activate this system. So let me take care of that, and I'll show you how to set everything else up. Okay, so what I've done is got the car up and running, and as you'll see, I've cut the VTEC pressure switch. In this car, because it's 0506, it's B11. In the 0204 cars, which is what most of you will have, it is B9. So you cut B9 or B11 on the ECU side and attach a wire to it. And basically what we do is the other end of the wire has to provide a ground. For the sake of this, I'm going to just show you. I have metal here which will act as a ground, and you touch it and that will activate the system. So the way this gets all set up is exactly the same. We basically need to retard ignition timing on decel, but what we're going to do is we're going to utilize the nitrous controls to set up triggers and specific conditions so that it only happens when we want it to happen, and if we've flicked the switch. So what we're going to do is, with everything, with your normal map loaded up, save a normal copy of your map and put it somewhere safe, and then load up another one, call it Crackle Tune Advanced. First thing we need to do once we get up over to the nitrous control is actually turn it on. So under nitrous control, there's this tab. It should be disabled normally. What we're going to do is call it generic output. So we're going to call it a generic output, and what we're going to do is first set it up. So we're going to set up the arming, which is your switch first. We're going to specify that that is B9 VTEC pressure switch. This technically doesn't matter because we're not actually programming any output, so you can just leave it as is. And we're going to have to specify that we want, or check on, invert arming input. The next step is we're going to have to specify the ranges that we want this to happen in. In this case, we don't want it to happen below 2000 RPM, and we want it to happen to a maximum of 10. That just makes sure that it happens up to at the bare minimum red line. The next parameter we have to make sure it's going to work is engine load, and this is the critical part, because what we want to do is make sure that it only happens under decel, not when we're accelerating, not when we're cruising, and it's under decel. So what I would do is switch the unit value to inches, and then specify 30 for the minimum and 22 for the maximum. So if it's above 22, it won't happen. The next step is throttle. Make sure it's at 0, and what I would do is also, to make sure it doesn't happen too high, set it to 20, because we don't need it any higher than that. Any higher than 20, it's not going to matter. Vehicle speed, make sure you can actually specify that it happens at certain vehicle speeds, but 0 to 158 is fine, and then leave the knock at 0. The next important thing to do is the next tab. Beyond settings, it is fuel and ignition. And this is where we're going to play with our ignition values. So in here, what we're going to do is specify that we want to control the ignition compensation values. And we're going to add negative values here so that under the certain conditions that we want, it retards timing. In this case, as I mentioned before, it's not perfect because the maximum value that you can put in here is -40. Even if you hit Control J, add your selection value, and you say -100, the most that it's going to show you is -40. Because -40 is the max that we can specify as the retarding value, we're going to have to make some adjustments to the main ignition table as well, but I'll get to that in a second. So what we do, specify 2,000 RPM to 10,000 RPM, make sure they all say -40, and technically you don't need to do anything with fuel. So if we go back to our settings, everything should be good. If you don't want it to happen right at 2,000 or down to 2,000, you can actually specify 2,500, for example, and it will only, basically once it gets to 2,500 RPM, it'll stop doing it. Even if you have the value of -40 at 2,000, these settings will override that. So let's do that. We'll set it at 2,500, and you'll see how it works. So I'm going to show you how the ECU knows what's happening. Basically, if you watch N20 arm 1, right now it's off, but if I go and touch the ground, it turns itself on. So that's the way you know it's working. You can test this. On to the last step, which is the ignition tables. And just like in the non-advanced Crackle tune how-to video, we have to adjust these. The issue here is simple math. If we already have a value in these sections, which is where we're going to be decelling and where it turns itself on, if it's already 40 degrees and we're going to take away 40 degrees, we're only going to be left with 0. So the maximum that we're going to see is 0, and we need more negatives than that. So what I would recommend is, in the range that you want it, for example, if you want it to hit -20, I would specify that we make this value 20. That way, when we add -40 to this, we'll be at -20. Likewise, if you only want to run -10 and you keep -40 in our ignition settings, then you could just switch this value out to Control J, tab 30. So again, 30 degrees base minus 40 degrees adjustment would give you -10. So I hope that makes sense. Now I'm gonna show you what it's like. So I'm gonna shoot for -10. I think -10 is a good all-around number. It doesn't take too much off here, so it won't create issues. It won't do popping while you're normally driving. When you go and activate the Crackle, -10 will still give you some pops. In regards to the fuel setup, there's no real way to turn on and off the overrun condition, so you will always have to do the activate it with TPS, basically ride the throttle on decel to make this happen. Like I said, it's not perfect, but it kind of gives you best of both worlds. So I'm going to make sure all of my settings are uploaded, so upload. And you'll see no popping, whatnot. It acts normal. I'm going to start driving, show you how it's still acting normal, and then I will trigger the system with the ground and show you how it turns itself on. Now I'll start driving, get up to speed, get into 4th gear, and show you how it works. So in 4th gear, I let off, no popping. Even if I ride the throttle down like I normally would, there's no popping. So you can drive around normally and not attract any attention. But if I go and arm it, so now it's armed, trigger, it goes back to normal. So, hopefully that makes sense. Hopefully that shows you guys how you can technically get the best of both worlds with this setup. You can make these adjustments, keep them in the system, and have it all activated with a switch utilizing the nitrous functions. So I hope you guys have found this video useful. It's an interesting way of utilizing some of the features that Kpro has to offer, and I do actually have some other videos planned that are going to use some more of the features, so please stay tuned. So if you like the video, please like it, please subscribe, and thanks for watching. Bye now.